Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, what kind of man defies an empire with only 300 men by his side, all while being hunted across some of the harshest terrain known to man? The answer, a man like Jan Smuts. Today we delve into one of the most audacious guerrilla raids in history, a tale of courage, wit and grit, where one man's brilliance kept the British Empire on its toes. Welcome to The Shadows and the Past, where history meets mystery and the past is your present. Hit that like and subscribe button and join us as we explore the uncharted corridors of history. It's 1901 and the Second Anglo-Boer War is grinding on. The British believe they have the Boers all but beaten. They've captured the major towns, scattered the Boer forces, and with the weight of their empire believe it's only a matter of time before total victory is theirs. But they've forgotten one crucial detail. The Boers, driven by their unyielding spirit, weren't going to surrender quietly. Leading the charge for the Boer cause was Jan Smuts, a man whose resolve was as unshakable as the mountains he used to outmaneuver the British. Smuts, a lawyer-turned-military commander, had honed his guerrilla tactics to near perfection. His mission, take his commando of just 300 men and raid British-controlled Cape Colony. His goal wasn't just military. He aimed to inspire a rebellion among the Boer sympathizers still scattered across the region. But inspiring a rebellion wasn't easy, and the British were determined to track him down before he could cause any real trouble. On a dark September night, Smuts and his men crossed the Orange River, slipping into Cape Colony like shadows in the night. Their plan was bold: strike at British convoys, disrupt supply lines, and keep the British constantly on edge. The terrain was unforgiving: barren deserts, rugged mountains, and vast stretches of wilderness. But Smuts knew the land well, and his men, though weary, trusted his leadership. For them, failure was unthinkable, and surrender even more so. The British knew Smuts was out there, but capturing him proved more elusive than they'd hoped. His commando moved swiftly and unpredictably, striking where the British least expected. Every raid, every ambush was calculated to remind the British that they weren't safe. Not in their forts, not in their convoys, and certainly not in the towns they had claimed. One of Smuts' most significant victories came at Elands River Poort, where his commando ambushed a British convoy in broad daylight. Imagine the scene. British soldiers, thinking themselves safe in the heart of their territory, moving supplies as they had countless times before. And then, in an instant, the quiet is shattered as Smuts and his men strike. Within moments, the British are overwhelmed, their convoy seized, and their soldiers scattered or dead. In this one bold move, Smuts didn't just capture ammunition and supplies. He delivered a brutal reminder to the British that no amount of control over the towns would guarantee their safety in the wilderness. For Smuts, it was a tactical and psychological victory. He knew that each raid, each convoy ambush, wasn't just about the supplies. It was about keeping the British constantly looking over their shoulder, never knowing when or where the next strike might come. But guerrilla warfare, as Smuts well knew, was a game of endurance as much as strategy. His men, though fiercely loyal and brave, were exhausted. They fought hunger, exhaustion, and the relentless pursuit of the British forces. At one point, Smuts' commando found themselves surrounded in the Hex River Mountains, trapped, it seemed, with no way out. Smuts, ever the tactician, surveyed the situation with cold precision. The British had them boxed in, high up in the mountains. But Smuts had learned one thing in his many years fighting the British: there was always a way. In the dead of night, Smuts led his men down a narrow, unguarded path, slipping through the British lines undetected. By morning, the British were left scratching their heads, wondering how the Boers had disappeared into thin air. But it wasn't just about outsmarting the British. Smuts' true goal was to ignite a Boer rebellion in the Cape Colony. If he could inspire the Boer sympathizers to rise up, it would force the British to fight a war on two fronts. But this was easier said than done. The Boer farmers and settlers in the region were wary of British reprisals, and despite Smuts' best efforts, the widespread rebellion he'd hoped for never materialized. Still, Smuts pressed on, refusing to give the British a moment's peace. His raids targeted convoys, railways, telegraph lines, anything that could disrupt the British war machine. Every successful raid was a victory, no matter how small, and every victory kept the Boer cause alive just a little longer. As the months wore on, the toll on Smuts and his men became more apparent. Supplies were running low, and the commando, though still fiercely loyal, was growing weary. But Smuts knew that every day they remained in the field was a victory in itself. Every British convoy they disrupted, every outpost they raided, was another blow to the British morale. And yet, even as the war dragged on, Smuts never lost his resolve. For him, this wasn't just about winning a war, it was about fighting for the survival of his people. He knew the British would never stop hunting him, never stop trying to bring him down, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he kept fighting, kept defying the odds. The culmination of Smuts' raid wasn't marked by a grand battle, but by the relentless exhaustion that had begun to take its toll on both sides. By early 1902, after months of harassing the British, Smuts knew that the campaign was nearing its end. His men, battle-hardened but worn down, had fought valiantly, but they were no closer to winning the war. Still, they had achieved their goal, keeping the British on edge and proving that the Boers were not yet defeated. In May 1902, as Smuts sat at the negotiating table for the Treaty of Vereeniging, he knew that while the British had won the war, the Boers had won something far greater, the respect of their enemy. Smuts' raid into Cape Colony had become a legendary chapter in the war, a testament to the power of guerrilla warfare and the unbreakable spirit of the Boers. And yet, this was not the end of Jan Smuts' story. The man who had once led daring raids against the British would go on to become a statesman, a key figure in both world wars and one of the most influential leaders in South African history. But it was in these wild, unforgiving landscapes that his legend was born, a legend of cunning, endurance, and relentless will. Ah well, such is life in the shadows. If tales like these stir your soul, where courage and strategy collide in the most unexpected ways, hit the subscribe button and join us for more secret stories of daring deeds and unstoppable resolve. And if stories like Jan Smuts' fearless raids intrigue you, click the link to explore more untold adventures. Perhaps the tale of George Patton, who led the first ever US motorized assault in Mexico's Sierra Madres. Welcome to The Shadows and the Past, where history meets mystery and the past is your present.